That's as good as money, sir. Those are IOUs. Go ahead and add it up.
Ah, yes, life imitating art. Well, we can't play dumb to the fact that California is in a major financial crisis. The state is sending out IOU notes today because it can't dig itself out of its $26 billion hole. One smart guy, Chris Markowski, joins us now to talk about it. Good morning, Chris.
It's Harry and Lloyd.
There we go.
What's going on?
We'll figure it all out. All right. Dumb and dumber, really. This does seem like a lot of dumb mistakes were made. What does this mean when we talk about fiscal emergency? What does that mean? They're in a fiscal emergency.
They don't have the money or the authorization to start paying out whatever state business government that they own. The numbers that I got, you do the news by the number, 28,742 IOUs are going out the door, total of $53.3 million.
Wow. Now, who's this going to affect the most? Do you know that? Is it the nursing, the roads, the bridges, all that stuff?
Well, the IOUs are actually, some of the banks are actually honoring. Bank of America, some places, you can actually take this IOU to the bank and you're going to get your money. So they're hoping that they're going to get this thing pushed forward. But there's a lot of bitterness taking place here in California. The governor, Arnold Schwarzenegger, put out a YouTube video yesterday mocking the legislature because yesterday they were holding committee meetings and hearings on cropping cowtails. Now, if anybody knows what cropping cowtails is, let me know because I haven't figured it out. But I got to check out this YouTube video.
Okay. Yeah, and I saw him yesterday talking about the fact that they don't want to address this piecemeal, that they want to try to fix the whole thing all at once. I mean, talk about that.
California is a very interesting state that they constantly gerrymander districts. That means that they constantly change the districts for every election, allowing politicians to entrench themselves in power. So it's very difficult to get officials elected out, and nothing ends up getting done. And they constantly are at this stalemate. And their budget, will just keep getting worse and worse and worse. Businesses continue to leave the state. They start heading for Arizona and Nevada, and the finances of the state continue to go down the tubes. They have very, very big problems there.
You mentioned states like Nevada, which leads me to my next question about tax cuts versus, spending cuts, or tax increases versus spending cuts. What's the answer here? I mean, is it a mixture of it, or do you just have to go with cutting spending and not raising taxes? Because if you raise taxes, you're going to have even more people leaving to Nevada.
Well, there's no doubt about it. And it's this debate. I guess there's going to be a lot of arguments in regards to this debate. But you take a look at where the fastest growing states are in regards to business, where businesses want to set up. They're always going to be in municipalities, locales, where it's most efficient, where the taxes are the lowest. This is why when you see automakers come here to the United States, they're not setting up in Michigan. They're not setting up in Detroit. They're setting up in Tennessee, Georgia, Alabama, all these other places because it's much less expensive. California really needs some fiscal change over there. They really need to start attracting businesses. I mean, it used to be, it's got a larger economy than France.
Right.
But that's
the 8th largest in the world.
Yeah, and it's just, it's going down the tubes right now.
And you answered already my next question, which was going to be, what are the lessons for other states? And there's the lessons that you have to attract businesses, not push them away.
States need to compete against one another, and that's what they need to do. And you need to attract business. You want to get people coming.
Well, here's some advice you don't hear every day. Forget about a college degree. A recent article in the New York Post says spending the time, money, and energy for a diploma will only leave you broke in the end. The watchdog on Wall Street, Chris Markowski, is sharing his knowledge with us now. Good morning, Chris.
Good morning. That guy wasn't looking for a headline or anything like that, was he?
No, absolutely not. Okay, so let's run down the pros and cons of getting a college degree.
Well, first and foremost, you need an education. Everybody needs an education. I don't care what it may be, depending on whatever field you want to go into. The problem is that people, they go to colleges and universities and they don't choose the right school depending on what they want to do. Does it make any sense in the world to go out and spend $40,000, $50,000 a year if you want to get involved in social work? It doesn't compute.
And we've talked about this before, that sometimes people decide on universities for example, social work, which is a very noble field.
Absolutely.
But they end up at a university which costs $40 grand a year, and you can only imagine the bills that you are left with once you graduate.
You're absolutely right. It's an enormous problem that people have. It's all about planning the right way. In this New York Post article, they're talking about, and they made some comparisons saying, well, if you did this and you put your money into a S&P fund over the same amount of time, it'd be worth this. But it doesn't consider the fact of what you learn and the life experiences that you get when you go to school. What's great now about the computer age, internet age that we're in is that anybody can get a college degree. You can log on on online. You can do all sorts of various different things. You may need to go part-time for a period of time. But now, now more than ever, you need to constantly be educating yourself, constantly updating your resume, because the economy constantly changes. Jobs constantly change.
And what about book smarts versus street smarts?
That's a good. I laugh at this all the time. You take a look at all the people that are involved in Wall Street in Washington, D.C., and I've made the suggestion that we need a constitutional amendment banning anybody from an Ivy League school working in either place, because they just keep screwing the thing up. Let's just get them out of there.
A lot of people would agree with you on that one.
We need some people that have actually had some real life world experience. I'm hiring somebody for my business. I'm looking to see the kid that, didn't have mommy and daddy pay his way through college the entire way, but also had to work a second job, waited tables, bartended, did all the things that I had to do it, because then I know that, they've gone through a similar type of experience.
And they're hungry. Because sometimes people that have been given everything, they don't have the strongest work ethics. That's not everybody, but a lot of times you do see that.
But even still, you take a look at book smarts and all these economists. Economists think that this is going to happen. How often are these economists right? The reality is you can read 100 books on how to go about hitting a fastball, but until you actually go out there and swing the baseball bat and practice it, you're not going to be able to do it.
Okay, let's talk about income-based repayment. It kicked in this week. So what does this mean for people that are considering going to college, not going to college, worried about debt after they graduate?
Well, there's all sorts of, we had the government website, and I'm slipping my mind, even though I wrote it maybe about 100 times last week.
We'll post
because
it
so
on
many
our website.
emails I got last week about what's that website, how do I do that? Government's offering, it's a totally new program based upon how much money you make, the size of your family, and also forgive some of these loans going
after
forward.
10 years.
Absolutely. The key is you want to get your loans under control. It doesn't hurt. It's okay to go part-time if you can't afford it. If you can avoid taking out the loans and get the second job and work a little harder, it's much better off doing that.
What is this? What is this? Where's all the money? That's as good as money, sir. Those are IOUs. Go ahead and add it.
Yes, it's life imitating art in the state of California, but we cannot play dumb to the fact that Cali is in a major financial crisis. The state is sending out IOU notes today because it cannot dig itself out of its $26 billion hole. Fortunately, we got a smart guy with us, the watchdog on Wall Street, Chris Markowski. Hey, Chris.
Hey, that's how Social Security works, too.
Exactly. It's exactly how it works.
Big file cabinet IOUs.
Lloyd's IOUs. Let's talk first about this, because I think that some people are confused about the fact, okay, they're sending out IOUs. They say they have no more money. Why don't they do what seems like governments just always do? Keep spending deficit. Keep spending in the hole. Keep borrowing.
They can't borrow really anymore.
They're at the end of the borrowing.
By law, they're tied up. And this is where I'm starting to get a little bit nervous, because all these banks are starting to return the TARP money back to the government, but the government's not returning the TARP money to the taxpayers. They're keeping it there in a slush fund. Now, we, as taxpayers, our government decides to start bailing out states. That sets a really, really bad precedent, because then states are just going to spend haphazard. Say, hey, we can do whatever we want. Something goes wrong,
have whatever kind of tax policy you want to.
The feds will bail us out. Sure. Yeah.
And let's talk about how did California, how did we get to this point? 8th largest economy in the world by itself, if it were a country. How did it get to this point?
To come up with an analogy, I was thinking about it before. There was a episode of Sex and the City with Sarah Jessica Parker, and she wanted to buy an apartment. And she makes all this money, and she realized, she had 400 pairs of shoes in her closet, and she couldn't afford to buy the apartment because she spent all this money on stuff. Now, certain social programs and stuff are fantastic, and it's not that they're deserving, but you have to have the money to pay for them. Right. And when you start buying stuff you can't afford, well, that's just where you get yourself in this hole.
Yeah, and speaking of the shoes, that's also when people start walking out of California into places like Nevada that has no state income tax.
Absolutely.
I mean, this just makes common sense. When you have the kind of tax structure set up that they do in California, which punishes businesses, they leave and go to other states.
I mean, look at how quickly it turned there in California. I mean, you go back to the 1990s where it was the Silicon Valley, and it was so much businesses flocking to California. Sure. They don't want to go there any longer. Who wants to go there? Who wants to set up under all the regulation, all the high tax rates? It's unaffordable to actually hire people.
Okay. Now, Governor Schwarzenegger talking about trying to solve the problem all at once rather than piecemeal. How do they go about? I mean, do you have any insight as far as how they would go about? Because they're having these special sessions which are getting nowhere. What could they do to really just say, look, all right, let's get serious about this?
It's cuts. I mean, they're going to have to make cuts no matter what.
It's the hard truth.
Yeah, they're going to need to make cuts. Certain unions, whatnot, they're not willing to take the pay cuts that they're going to have to take. Sacrifices are going to need to be made in these situations. What are you going to do? I don't know if they're waiting for the feds to, the cavalry to come in, and we, the taxpayers, and, if you live in Wisconsin, if you live in Florida, if you live in New York, why should you be sending your money to to the state of California. It doesn't make sense to me.
Right, and if you thought an auto bailout was big, wait until you're bailing out the 8th largest economy in the world.
Well, I don't want to sound nasty, but you know what? I hope that some of these states fail. I hope they default on their bond debt, because you know what? Then they're going to start having to do things the right way.
They have to make
and
the
live within their
necessary
means.
changes.
Absolutely.
Okay.